there was not really anybody that I could talk to before I married about what to look for, what to expect, how to work through stuff. And the people that I knew who were married, their marriages didn't look like what I wanted my marriage to look like necessarily. So that's a whole other situation. But I'm thankful for the opportunity to minister and to share, folks. Hello, Tamara. I see y'all in the house. Coming on in. Hey, Miss Denise. Good to see you. Yay, yay, yay. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I want you to know that I'm not here because I'm perfect, but I have been married 25 years to the same man. And it has been a marriage that has grown me and changed me, and God is glorified because of it. We have 2 adult children and 1 beautiful, amazing granddaughter. And so we're excited about this next season in our lives. I'm also the founder of warriorwives.club, which is a website where I've got quite a few testimonies and a lot of information for wives who are, and I like to minister to wives, not just and this is a ministry as well, but the opportunity to fellowship and, meet and all that kind of stuff. But I minister to wives who are oftentimes in a hard season in their marriages or in a hard marriage period. There is that possibility in a person's life that your marriage could be the relationship that grows you closest to Christ and that continually gets you to a spot where you're at his feet constantly. So, hey, Opal, another newlywed in the house. So anyway, I'm also the author of Married for 5 Minutes and a book called Did I Marry the Wrong Guy? Which those are both birthed out of experiences and the opportunity to minister to women over the years. So there's that. I've also written a lot of Christian fiction books. And so I know some of you don't know me. I haven't met you. This is our first time meeting each other. So I'm excited. Thank you for being here. And let's go ahead and jump into this because my marriage is, I would say it has been a challenging one, not because I'm a bad person or because my husband is a bad person, but because we just came into it not knowing much of anything. Part of me wanted to say, and for years said, well, this marriage isn't working out. It's not good because I blame myself for getting married so young. And some people blame themselves for getting married so late. I mean, there's just so many reasons to blame yourself for all kinds of stuff, right? Hey, Fifi. I used to work out with Fifi for like a month, right? But anyway, I realize now that and I think it's important that we stop blaming ourselves for maybe decisions that we made a while back. I realize now that I married my husband because I loved him according to the definition of love that I had at that time. And he loved me according to that same definition. Problem is the definition was not God's definition by any means. And so God had to just reorder that whole thing. I wouldn't even call the first 8 years of our marriage a marriage. It was just a hot mess and 2 kids. That's what it was. But God, he is faithful and he's changed me. And I like to minister to women who are in that spot where it's just hard. And there are harder seasons than others, and there are more difficult marriages than others, and there are easier marriages than others. But I remember getting to a point once in my marriage where I honestly said to the Lord, you know what, Lord, if you take my husband, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm all right. I can teach my children that their father was this great man and God rest his soul. I was actually okay with that. And then it got so bad that I was at a point where I said, I don't really even care which one of us you take at this point. My mother and my sister-in-law, and then they can raise the kids and the kids will be fine. But if this is what it's going to be like for the next 50 years, I can't do this. You can take me now. Because I didn't want to divorce, but I didn't want to stay married. Really what I wished was that the whole thing had never happened. That's really what I wanted. But of course you can't go back and erase time, right? So God had to just come in and bring me in because I was getting ready to slide into a really dangerous place. When you get to a point where your marriage is so painful that you really just wish you could go on back to glory. That's a spot where the enemy loves to come in and tear things down. And I've been at that place. And if you are there now, or you've been there, or you know somebody who's there, I need you to tag that person. Bring them on in here, cause them to come on in because this is where you need to be. You need to be in the fellowship of women who have been here, done this. Hey, Miss Cozella, that's my other auntie. Women who know how to push through and how to help you push through. And I'm not saying that your marriage is going to end up one way or this way. I don't know what your marriage involves, but I do know that when one person makes a decision to seek things God's way, to seek to do things God's way, that changes the dynamics of the entire marriage. I don't know what the whole marriage is going to look like for you. I don't have a crystal ball, as they say, but I know what can happen when one person says, Lord, choose me to start a change. I don't know what this is going to look like. I'm just submitted to you. And so that's where we are tonight. And I have some practical things I want to share with those of you who are thinking, okay, maybe I'm not right there, Michelle, but I could use some help in my marriage. And even if you're not feeling like you need help at this moment, you just want to gird yourself up, right? So that's where we are tonight. So I commend you for being here, and I'm just glad to see you, whether you're married, single, divorced, male, female, ready to quit, happy you in, wish you hadn't got in, just want to, even if you just came to get something to share with somebody else that you know is struggling. Thank you for being here. And let us get going, because I really feel like even what I share with you, I know we're talking about marriages tonight, but I do think everybody, especially everybody who's a believer, you're going to get at least one relationship in your life where you get a chance to practice loving somebody who doesn't deserve it, a chance to practice being kind and patient and long-suffering and forgiving. You're going to get a chance to do that. It might be with your mother. It might be with your spouse. It might be with your child. It might be with a coworker. It might be with a sibling. But you're going to get a chance. God's going to have a relationship for you where he gets to conform you to the image of Christ. Because if all your relationships are peaceful and everybody likes you and everybody does what you want them to do, you don't really get a chance to forgive anybody, right? You don't get a chance to forgive somebody unless they do something that offends you. Otherwise, you don't get a chance to forgive. You can't go around saying, well, I thank the Lord for forgiving me, because then that's why I forgive other people. Well, you never had a chance to forgive anybody else. So he's going to allow you the opportunity to be patient with somebody, right? The opportunity to submit to somebody, right? And so for me, that relationship has been my marriage and continues to be my marriage. But I will tell you that it is probably the best thing that has ever happened to me. In retrospect, looking back over it, 25 years into it, I'm like, you know what? My whole life would be a totally different thing that I don't even know if I would want that other thing. Because this marriage right here was the best thing that could have happened. It actually made Romans 8:28 come full circle for me. All right. We're going to start there. And actually, I was thinking about this, that it probably shouldn't say lack of communication. It probably should say communication, period. Because lack of communication is an issue within this umbrella of communication, right? But that's the thing all by itself. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of 3 areas, if you can think of 3. Maybe you only have 1. Maybe you have just a couple. But 3 areas where you struggle in your marriage with communication. I'm going to, for the sake of example, share a couple of mine with you. Hey, Ty, good to see you. Just by way of example, so in the Stimson household, right now, I'm feeling like our communication is shallow and just not exciting. It's just like what I imagined retired people would do. Just, you know, what you doing? Nothing. How was your day? All right. Mine was, what'd you eat? Sandwich. All right. Like I feel like that's our communication right now. So that's one that I'm going to put down. Like, to me, that's not exciting. I don't know if that's a real problem or it's just an imagined problem, right? But I will tell you another one that and I'm just sharing these, and these might not be yours. Yours might be totally different. One thing that causes a big, huge communication problem with me and my husband is if I get it in my mind somehow, and maybe it's true, I don't know. But if I feel like he's talking to me like a child, oh, now we got a problem, right? That is something that causes a problem for me. Like, the tone of the communication is not always right to me. In different seasons of our life, of this 25 years, we've had times where we just weren't listening to one another. We've had times where my husband would walk away. He just would be like, I'm out. I can't talk about it. Like, who does that, right? Some people do, right? And then there were times when I felt like we were only talking about kids and bills. I've heard this didn't happen to us, but I know it has happened. There's a lot of yelling and arguing and cussing and fussing and calling people names. That could be something that's happening. And sometimes, there's just like a snippy communication. It's not really loving. It's just like short, choppy, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to give you a second to just jot down an area of communication or a form of communication that's a struggle for y'all. So D, if it's a destructive type of a pattern. T is for to-do list, and N is for non-existent. So kind of code your little ideas over here on the side according to what you think they are. When I work with women in courses and in classes and at churches and sitting down over lunch, for real, I think we have to start here with this D. And I want you to consider for a moment that if your issues are along this destructive line, you and your husband and the way that you are conversing or not conversing or blowing up at one another or whatever, you might have a problem with communication that goes way back, right? So it's not even about him. It's not even about you, actually. There's some stuff that is basically in your system, and I'll explain that in just a second. And so maybe this one thing more than anything is the root of it. So maybe you're just not responding well to stressful situations. Maybe you're just not responding well to conflict, period, right? And so that may be something that's rooted, again, in some old stuff, in like a pattern of responding to stress. That's fight, flight, or freeze, right? Fight means if you go here, I'm going to go here with you and we're going to have it out, right? Flight meaning I can't tell, I'm out. And then freeze, where you're still there, but you can go emotionally numb. Now that I can do. I can go so numb on you, and I just be sitting there, and I might even actually go through the motions, but I have completely shut down. That is generally my protective thing that I do. So there is, and I'll send you the link to this if you want to. I want you to recognize if you're in this destructive mode, and I'm starting here first because this one to me is kind of our 911 situation, right? I'm going to share with you this ACEs, some of the ACEs stuff. And so this ACEs thing, ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. This is all about things that you could have endured between the time you were born and the time that you turned 18, just because that was the period for the study between the Centers for Disease Control and Kaiser Permanente Insurance. So I'm going to give you a little quiz, and we're going to see what your ACEs score is. Now, before we go here, let me just say we're not revisiting trauma. We're not reliving. I just want you to, in your mind and in your heart, get your score. And it's going to be somewhere between a 0 and a 10. So if something is true for you, just give yourself a 1 for that, and you'll be looking at your score at the end. And if you want more information about this particular study, it really started off as a study of obesity and what was causing people to be obese. But when they actually started looking at the experiences that people had, they realized this huge connection between stress and trauma and how that was playing out in people's lives later on with disease, and kind of that interim with the obesity that leads up to disease. And so all of these things play a part if these things go unresolved in your life. So here we go real quickly. Get your mind ready to just count. Hopefully not too high, but it may be high. I don't know. All right, 1 point. If before you were 18, someone in your household often swore at you, insulted you, put you down, humiliated you, or acted in a way that made you feel like you might be physically hurt soon. So if you felt physically threatened in your household, or somebody was humiliating you, putting you down, that's a 1. Give yourself 1 point. If you, and then the last one, did a household member of yours go to prison? So these are the 10 ACEs that were in this study, that came out of the study, the things that caused, or that I shouldn't say caused, but kind of predispositioned people to be overreactive to a lot of things, to stress, to go into fight, flight, or freeze mode just like that the moment that they are feeling any type of threat at all. And I bring this up, and again, if you want more information about the ACEs study, if you got the, if I emailed you this 911 workbook, you're already on my email list, and I will send you the link later on tonight. I already have it in my system to send it to you. But you've given yourself a point for each one of these. And the studies are like, once you get up to like 4, 5, 6 plus, the idea is, if this is how you grew up, you were under, first of all, thank God that you made it, right? This is stuff that a lot of folks didn't make it through, unfortunately. Thank God that you are still standing, right? That's the first thing. But secondly, recognize that as you're forming and as you're growing, and you have this extra release of cortisol and adrenaline in your system, it, again, impacts you in ways that you may not have recognized. Even if it's not you, if this is your spouse, if your spouse were to take the ACEs quiz and come along and find out he's at a 7, he's at a 9, that's explaining a whole lot of stuff about what's going on between you and him. And it will be his choice as to whether or not he's going to actually address that. But it's going to put you in a position to love on him, right? And Cassie's saying, but God, I'm so going there, right? First of all, thank him that you made it out of that. But second of all, I looked at this study from an educator's perspective, because I'm realizing that there are a lot of children who are in that right now in the classrooms. And what we're finding out is that if one person, one adult, would show that child some love, not even everybody in the school, but if one person would love on that child and be a consistent, and be like, you can go off if you want to, but I'm still going to be standing here when you get finished. If one person would do that for that child, it offsets so much. And so that's part of what we do if your spouse is in that position. And even if you're in that position, there's so much love available to you through Christ. Amen. I can, yes, if you're on my list, I'm going to email that to you tonight. I'll give you the my link if you don't have it already. But definitely, you have so much love available to you now. Whatever, and I will say this, whatever you did not get from your parents, you can get from the Lord. Whatever you didn't get from your parents back then, you can get from the Lord today. Right? My score was about a 5. When I the first time I saw it, it wasn't really explained to me clearly, and I thought I had like a 3. But then when I really recognized what it was, I was a 5, and I didn't even think I was gonna be like that high. But I didn't realize how those things were affecting me and causing some destructive patterns in my marriage, right? So the second type was the to-do list communication. I see this a lot of people who have kids with a lot of really active lives, right? Kids who are in soccer, and you're just in a season. I need you to recognize, if that's where you are, if your communication just sounds like a bunch of to-do lists, that is a season. That is a season that passes. But it is a season. There is a season where there's just a lot of, you're raising kids. And I remember I had been married about 13 or 14 years, and one of the wife talks that's available on warriorwives.club. Oh, Cassie says, don't believe everything you feel. Your feelings are fickle. Definitely. You got to stop being feeling led and be spirit led, right? That's a huge change for to walk in that, though. It's so empowering. But I was talking to a lady who at that time had been married about 26 years, and their kids had just left the house. And so I had been married maybe 13 or 14 years. And so we were in the thick of kids and soccer and all these different things. And I did feel like at that point, all of our conversation was, did you pay this? Okay, did you call and do the insurance? Like, okay, Stephen needs to do this. All right, well, turn around and go. All of that kind of stuff. And it felt like it was not a marriage. But my friend who was ahead of me 26 years when I was at 13 or 14 said to me, now that the kids have gone, I realized she called it stress. I don't know that I would call it stress, but she said, now that the kids have gone, I realized that season brought a different priority to our marriage. And the kids were a really big priority. We were still a priority to ourselves, but she said it brought a different type of stress into their marriage that she didn't realize was even there until they left. And now that her kids were gone, she said, I'm really feeling like I'm really getting to know my husband again. And we're just getting back to that season of just us again. And I don't think, until she said that to me, it didn't occur to me that it wouldn't always be like this. And I enjoyed the season. Don't get me wrong. I miss having kids here at the house a lot. My son is back now. And he says he's leaving again in a couple of months. We'll see. But I like it when my granddaughter comes over and there's little feet in the house. So I'm saying enjoy the season, appreciate the season, recognize that it is a season. And don't cause it to put bitterness in your heart because you're not where you were 6 years ago before the kids got here. To adjust that expectation like you were talking about, Fifi, that this is a new season. We do communicate differently. We do have different schedules right now. And to have a conversation about what would actually work for you right now. Okay, no, we can't have 2-hour-long conversations like we used to back before we had kids. But I would just like a text message, every week or throughout the day. If I can't reach you, you can't reach me, because sometimes they're just that season. Like I said, somebody might be in grad school. Everybody that I know who's ever worked on a PhD, like you don't see them for like 2 years. That's just how it is in that season and in that time. And they can try, but they just aren't. There's not enough hours in the day for them to have that same level of communication that they would have had in another season. So adjust that expectation. But your biggest job in this season is not to let your heart get hardened because the season has changed or because it's not exactly how it used to be in the past. All right. The third one was the non-existent communication. Recognize that you too may be in a specific season. And don't get yourself into this idea that it's all over. Marriage is not all or nothing. So we married, like I said, 25 years. 8 of those years was hot mess. At this point, that's less than half of the years. And if God says the same and we make it 50 years, that will be a very little part of our marriage. I think you need to have that big picture perspective that, yes, this is a busy, busy season. This is a season where there's a lot of ripping and running and we don't have the communication that we used to have before and the way it used to be. But it's a good season. We're going to enjoy it. And then we'll be in another season and we'll readjust when that time comes, right? So recognize that the forms of communication that do exist. So it may be that it's not what it used to be, but there may be something really, really sweet that you're overlooking. So in my case, my husband and I, like I said, right now we're in the, I was going to say like an elderly people season. Maybe we are getting up there. I don't know. But it's what I thought it would look like when I got older, which is like what it is. What you doing? Nothing. How was your day? Eat a sandwich. Okay, well, news is on. All right, come to bed. That's where we are right now. And I had to stop myself from getting upset about it, but I was realizing just the other night that when my husband does come to bed, I'm usually in bed before he gets to bed. When he comes to bed, he will rub my arms and he will rub my legs. Now, I don't really know why he's doing that. It's just something that he wants to do. It's his way of being affectionate to me and letting me know that he's here in bed with me. Now, I've been married since I was 21, so I've never had, except for the time I kicked him out, that's a whole other situation. But I've never had not my husband in bed with me at night. I don't know what that's like. So I do feel like I've taken that for granted because I've never not had it. And the Holy Spirit had to let me know this is communication. It is not a card. No, it is not a lovey-dovey song. But this is the communication that the two of you have at this time. It is just a leg rub. It's an arm rub at 10 o'clock at night. And I need to be okay with if this is where we are right now, because my husband and I are both kind of loners, so it actually works okay for me a lot of times. But if our communication now looks like you're on the couch watching this and I'm sitting right here and I'm reading a book, and if we're okay with that, I don't need to compare that to somebody else. I don't need to compare it to some other season of my life. I don't need to act like this is terrible when actually I'm actually okay with it, right? I need to recognize that. I think we all need to be aware of where we are in our marriages and in those seasons. And so let's just say you're not okay with that, right? I don't know what else. And it's funny because it's like, I don't even know what else I want to talk about with my husband. It's like, we already, like, after 25 years, you kind of know. I mean, I know what you like to eat. I don't necessarily need to call you and say what you want, because if I'm stopping here, I already know what 6 things on this menu that you like, so I really don't need to talk to you, right? But if you do need to have this conversation, I'm going to say you need to do an ashy needs lotion. So ashy is dry, bumpy, rough, that kind of thing, right? And it could be that you need to have this conversation about this ashy thing with your husband. So before you go ashy, I know it's getting late, so I'm going to give you guys the quick version of ashy needs lotion, okay? Lotion stands for love, time, and on-point conversations, okay? So love, that's the low. Shun stands for time. On stands for on point. Ashy needs lotion. So when you're getting ready to have a conversation that could be ashy, it's a little rough, it's a little bumpy, you want to couch that conversation in love. Fifi says she prays about it ahead of time. And that's where you're going to get that love perspective. So I'm not coming at this conversation like, this is what I need you to do because I'm really embarrassed by what you did. I'm not coming at you from a spirit of, me thinking about what's best for me. I really want to approach this conversation with the question, what would be the most God-glorifying end to this conversation? Would it be, baby, let's pray about this at the end of it? Would it be that we're going to give each other a high five? I want you to get that in your mind. Like, how can love be most expressed in this conversation? And then T stands for time sensitive. Is it the right time to have this conversation? Is it the right company? Are we in the right company? A lot of times you don't need company to have that ashy conversation, right? If we're addressing something ashy. So I know for myself, after having done some case studies in my household, there are certain times that we don't need to have conversations, ashy conversations, right? So when my husband gets home from work, it's usually later in the evening. He is not really good for ashy conversations. He's really not good for ashy conversations until like Saturday, really late Saturday, after he's had a good night of rest without waking up with an alarm clock. And since I've gone back to work last year, I realized I am not good for having ashy conversations after my job because I'm fighting traffic both ways. Traffic is a slow stress point for me all throughout the day, like driving home and going to work. I didn't realize that traffic actually does have an effect on me. And so I'm coming against that in the spirit, right? But I recognize that I'm not necessarily, I haven't been at home all day in my pajamas like I used to. I'm not necessarily ready to have ashy conversations any more than he is. And we're both like snippy. Wednesday and Thursday, we don't need to have no conversations. Because by that time, we're just too tired. And if he's hungry, and if somebody is tired and or sleepy, that is not the time to have the conversation. So going at it in love, going at it with the right time. And this is the last one. Particularly, I'm finding for men, and I got this from a book called How to Improve Your Marriage Without Talking About It. The author said that when we talk to men, we need to have on point, very specific agendas at least at the beginning of the conversation. So she said there's 4 words that we don't want to say to a man because it puts them in that cortisol, fight, flight, freeze mode. That's according to the authors of that book. But I kind of believe it because this is what my experience has been with my husband. If I say, we need to talk, those 4 words, that could be anything, right? That could be, I can't stand you. That could be, the dog got out. That could be, I'm on the side of the road with my car broke. That could be anything, right? So she says that's kind of stress inducing. That's kind of a trigger according to the author for men. She says one of the things we want to do is have an on-point conversation. And so when you pose that to your husband, babe, I really want to talk to you and get some resolution about how our conversations have been going lately. So be upfront and right up at the beginning. This is where I'm going with this. Because if we don't lay that out at the very, very beginning, then sometimes they kind of go into this whole whatever she says, I got to solve it mode. And that's maybe not even what you want. So framing it in love, what's the most God-glorifying thing that can happen in this conversation? Time. Is this the right time? Is it the right place? You might even ask your husband, babe, are you willing to talk to me right now about the situation that we're having with Johnny? No. Can it wait till tomorrow? You know what? In all honesty, it probably can. Because I'm telling you right now, the husband that I'm going to get after 16 hours is not the same husband I'm going to get after 8 hours of rest and some breakfast. right? Crystal Evans-Hurst says you're going to have your best ashy conversations with your husband right after you have sex with him, because he really, really likes you right then. Right? And you're both sitting there. You're both relaxed. Everybody's happy. Now you can have this ashy conversation. That was what Crystal said. So anyway, thank y'all for joining me. I hope that you've got now, again, some strategies that you might try